I want to welcome everybody to the first of 4 talks in the second year of a collaborative effort to host a Down Island Coastal Pond speaker series. My name is Nina Ferry-Montanil, and I work for the Martha's Vineyard Shellfish Group. And together with Amy Russo from Lagoon Pond Association, Martha Klein from Friends of Sengekontacket, and Bev Potsid from Tisbury Waterways, we've been working with the support of our organizations and meeting regularly over the last year to bring interesting and timely science talks to the community. Today we have Andrew Karlinsky with us, and he is the biologist for the Natural Resource Department of the Wampanoag tribe of Gayhead Aquinnah. Andrew has a background in environmental science with a focus on wildlife and fisheries ecology and conservation. In the Natural Resource Department, he assists with many ongoing studies and projects. In 2023, Andrew piloted a Codium removal project. The goal of that project was to assess and mitigate the threat of invasive Codium within Menemsha Pond while providing an incentive to Aquinnah shell fishermen, residents, and tribal members to support the removal of the invasive species. This project supports restoration of our native eelgrass population, which in turn supports the nursery habitat of our bay scallops, thus reducing shellfish mortality caused by Codium. Today, he will share its successes with us, but also raise some questions. What can we do to take further steps when the Codium is removed from the water? The hope here is to increase awareness of the invasive macroalgae's impacts on our local waters and also involve the rest of the island community so that we can start removing Codium from all of our island water bodies. So I'll hand it off to Andrew.
Thank you, Nina.
Thank you, Nina.
Thank you everyone for joining me. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm assuming so. Awesome. My name is Andrew Karlinsky. Thank you for coming. Codium is Odious, dealing with marine invasives. So let's start. So what is Codium? So Codium fragiles subspecies Timentastoides is a type of macroalgae, green spongy macroalgae. It is found in the intertidal and subtidal zones. It is roots to hard surfaces. That includes rocks, shells, and ship holes, which we will come to discuss later on. That is a large issue. And they're resilient in a range of watermen and grow into this entire branch here. So, and even that's an example of stem fragmentation. That tiny branch can become its own grown individual. So when did it get here? So it first got here in Gardiner's Bay in 1957 off of Long Island Sound. It is believed to have gotten here through 2 different means, although one is more likely than the other. First and foremost, the most obvious answer is that it came here being attached to ship holes as biofouling. It can root to, again, hard surfaces, so it mostly came here through European ships in the early 50s and eventually, broke off and separated into the rocky shores of the Gardiner's Bay area and then was able to grow undisturbed. There's also the idea that it potentially got here through transported Japanese and European oysters, but there was actually regulations put in place about 8 years prior to its introduction in Long Island Sound that where quality control measures were taken place so that way this invasive wouldn't disturb the production of the aquaculture industry, more specifically oysters. But then again, it still came attached to these ship holes, roots into Long Island Sound, and then reaches and is noticed on the south shore of Connecticut about 4 years later in 1961. And then the earliest account found in Rhode Island in 1962. So as you can see, it's kind of making its way up along Long Island Sound. And then the earliest account we could find, and it's cut off, but is off Surf Drive Beach in Falmouth, which I don't know if any of you guys have ever taken that drive. If you ever have time to kill in Falmouth, it's a great view. It is found there in 1967. So if you look at the distance between where it's first found in Gardiner's Bay and Connecticut, that is a lot larger of a range compared to Falmouth and Oak Bluffs or the rest of the vineyard in Vineyard Sound. So presumably within within 4 years after it is found on Martha's Vineyard. Also, the north shore of the vineyard is incredibly rocky, so that also creates that prime habitat for Codium to root to and to thrive in. So, yeah. So, the negative impacts of Codium. So, first and foremost, as Nina mentioned, it is a harming native aquatic vegetation, more specifically eelgrass. So, as it sits at the bottom of the pond, it creates, as it grows, it outcompetes eelgrass by crowding and loosening sand beds by floating up. So, as Codium can root to rocks, and as it moves into water, it can loosen as it oxygenates and become buoyant, and it loosens that sand, which eelgrass is primed to rooting to, and can result in eelgrass not being able to successfully establish itself, and or if it is established, can become loosened and drift ashore. And also by doing so, it removes eelgrass as a habitat option for shellfish, which in turn results into the smothering of shellfish and hindering their abilities to function as an organism. So as shellfish grow and disperse themselves and move within the water column, and they're not able to sit in eelgrass beds, they find Codium and they sit in there. As they sit in that Codium, eventually that Codium can break off and start to grow over shellfish and attach itself, thus reducing its ability to spread and spawn future generations and survive. And so as it grows in there, and where shellfishermen are going to want to go out to harvest this stuff, they'll start going through with their gear and they'll start pulling up heaping amounts of Codium with little scallop and other shellfish that's being harvested in there. So it'll fill up those drags quickly. It will interfere with the gear, which can also damage it. As you can see, there's one that's teared up that with little bits of dried Codium in it. So that can ultimately impact the aquaculture industry, which is why we created the Codium removal program, because of its interference with that industry. So when we when we came up with the Codium removal program, it was brought to our attention from town administration that there was an ongoing Codium problem within the Menendra Pond complex. Mind you also, it's not like this is a new rule. Codium along with green crabs, moon snails, whelks, and brittle starfish as invasive nuanced species are required by town bylaw to be removed and displaced above the shoreline if it is to enter your boat and or so that it cannot re-enter that body of water. So with the Codium removal program, we had 3 goals in mind. One being, of course, to reduce the overall amount of Codium in Menendra Pond. You reduce that, you're going to ultimately improve the health of the Menendra Pond ecosystem by allowing for that eelgrass to successfully establish itself within Menendra Pond. And as far as for the aquaculture industry and those going out to harvest Codium, the program, how it works, is essentially a bounty program. So what we did in the beginning is we, as pictured, we purchased a bunch of fish totes, which helped us quantify the amount of Codium that was being removed. And we gave those to shell fishermen. And by bringing in these totes of Codium, we were able to reward shell fishermen for their effort in removing it. So by rewarding them and paying them out for that, it helped offset that cost of time and resources spent out on the water. So how does the Codium removal process work? So it's really not rocket science. This is West Basin, for those of you that don't know. This is basically the point of operation for Codium removal. This is where Aquinnah town residents, tribal members, and shell fishermen will either keep their boats tied up, or where that truck is right now, will drop their boats in and out as they please. So how it basically works is, we leave the totes out for these guys to grab. They'll go out on the water, they'll sift through their Codium, they'll collect whether or not they're going for recreational or for commercial purposes. They'll get their yield, they'll have these fish totes. as they're sifting through Codium on their culling board rather than have it all piled up there and just making more mess and less room for them to operate and grab that, or remove the scallops from. They have the totes to put it into, which also just helps, again, quantify how much is being removed. So once they're called a day, they head back in, they'll drop it off on, you can kind of see right here, that's more of a pile, but they'll kind of just drop it off on the side of the docks for me to come and collect. So I then go down and as you can see, the truck bed is even with the dock. The lowball estimate is that these totes weigh about 120 pounds. I like to think of myself as a physically able person. However, I do not want to be lifting that much Codium every single day. So to make it easier for myself, I drop the truck bed down. I will drag the totes up and then throw them in the back of the truck. And then we bring it down to a plotted land off of Old South Road in Aquinnah that is the tribe owns. That basically has as a space for us to put our trailers and seasonal gear in. And then we found an area that, you know, wasn't being utilized or things weren't being placed, and we started dumping Codium there. As pictured, that's actually Noah Manning, a tribal member intern who helps me out in the summer, and I wish he was here throughout the season because he makes the heavy lifting a lot easier, but unfortunately I don't get him. So after it's all removed, we bring the totes back to West Basin for residents and shellfishermen to utilize again, and then, you know, after that, we'll bring the truck back. I'll just spray the back of the truck with Saltex, which is just a soap essentially that helps with the corrosion, or prevent the corrosion of the back of the truck bed, because thing's brand new, it's a nice truck, we want to utilize it and keep it clean. So again, it's not rocket science, it's really straightforward. We're just, you know, hauling it from dock to dump site, back to the docks, clean it, and call it a day. So now that we have all this Codium, let's look at the results. So the first year was a lot more successful than we anticipated. As you see, there's 439 total totes of Codium removed, and again, with that low ball estimate of 120 pounds per tote, that comes out to just below 50,000 pounds of Codium. It's a lot of Codium to be removed. Granted, also, it's not just pure Codium. There's shell and other debris mixed in there, but again, there's still a lot of Codium. And so if you look at the graph, you'll see these up and down days where, you know, all of a sudden there's days where, you know, 25 plus totes are being removed, and then all of a sudden there's, you know, 5 totes, 3 totes being removed. So there's a lot of variation in how much is going in. I'm also not going out every single day. It's not like these guys are going out every single day. You know, if one guy brings in 1 tote, I'm not gonna just, you know, I'll wait until there's a more reason for my time to be spent taking care of that problem. So as for other reasons as to why there might be low amounts of Codium removal, poor weather conditions. So if it isn't above 32 degrees by 10 o'clock, there's no shellfishing permitted within the town of Aquinnah for that day. So that's one factor of temperature, but also if it's not the temperature that's getting you, it's the wind. Menumsha Pond is on the north side of the island, so if you get a strong, you know, northwester or nor'easter wind coming through, it's probably going to make your time out there a little bit more difficult. Not that these guys aren't, you know, salty bone kind of guys and they're tough, but you know, sometimes they just might not want to power through it. Also, if not that, sometimes the market price of scallops can be down, and it might not be worth the time for these guys to go out and start harvesting it. That wasn't a huge issue that was mentioned to me a lot in the first year. However, this year I'll discuss more. Became a bit more of a problem. And then also just boat and gear issues. Again, I mean, you saw earlier, like this Codium, as they drag it up, it can, when you're spending all that time lifting this debris up, eventually, you know, a hole in the net might form or the rig might go completely. So then you run into that issue, and then extraneous factors. You know, one guy pulled his shoulder out last year and was out for a week, so, you know, anything can happen. So that's the first year. The second year, you notice right off the bat, yeah, it's a lot less. We're looking at about 30% of what was removed in the first year. Granted, that's not to say 122 totes of Codium is still a lot removed, but there are some silver linings with that as well. So first and foremost, one gentleman who actually wasn't able to go out last year at all shellfishing and was able to go out and spin out a lot this year, has mentioned to me multiple times how much of an impact the guys that went out in the previous year made, and how when he looks down, he can see the bottom of the floor, the pond floor, and it's mostly sand and or a little bit of Codium. That's great to hear, because that means it's working and they're actually able to put a dent in how much is in there. Poor weather conditions. So I don't know if any of you guys went outside between January and February, but it was incredibly cold. A lot of days below freezing. So again, the opportunity for guys to go out wasn't as prominent. And again, super windy, a lot of snow. The scallop market value, this year, at one point, someone mentioned to me that it was about $14 a pound, which for the amount of effort that these guys, and money and time that these guys are going out harvesting this stuff, and then they also have a freezer full from some of last year's supply and extra stuff that they got this year. It's not worth their time to go out and harvest more if they're not going to make money off of what they have already. So, and some guys, they'll go off island for that kind of thing, but most of the people are going down to Edgartown. They're not going to bother with their inventory. And again, boat gear issues. I mean, I know a couple guys that had some engine issues this year and weren't able to get out nearly as much. So, that comes into play too. An extraneous factor is health. I know one guy that, he was out a lot last year, and for whatever reason, he does not seem to be around nearly as much this year. I mean, I think just as you get older, things don't work the way, you can't bend down as much as you want. So, yeah, so overall, I mean, that's still, just shy of 65,000 pounds of Codium removed between the beginning of the program last year and then this year. And it's, again, exceeded our expectation of how successful this program would be. So we're super happy with that. So now the question is, we have all this Codium, what do we do with it? Rather than just let it sit in a pile, are there any feasible options to utilize it? So, what do you do then? So, first and foremost, there's a difference, and if you look it up, there's a large difference between Codium that is farmed and there's Codium that just wildly grows. Codium that is farmed is a lot more feasible, and that there's a lot more quality control in it. If you're going to eat it, it's probably better for you. It's, again, just going to be more utilizable. So when it comes to gardening and fertilizing, everything I've found between, Cape and Islands farming pages and people I've talked to from around the island have a very mixed review as to whether or not it's good, bad, or will have any effect on your soil. I had read one post about some guy saying how he put some in his soil and then he put worms in there, and then he was afraid the nitrogen in the Codium that was wildly caught was going to kill his worms. So, people have a range of stories into reasons as to why not the effect. But also I've read from some of the stuff that if you wash it in a cold water bath, that supposedly helps the Codium, if it's still alive, remove and force out those excess salt and nitrogen content, as well as clean off the sand and other debris that you might find on it. There is also the option of biocharing. For those of you who don't know, biocharing is essentially taking any organic matter and throwing it in the furnace and then burning it down to a carbon-based black clump powder almost that can be mixed into your garden, your fertilizer, soil, anything. Fill potholes, whatever you want. So actually, I did have a woman come to collect a lot of Codium in the summer. Granted, the program had been done for a couple weeks at that point, and it was really dried down and a lot more shell. And I asked her, how did the biochar go? Were you able to utilize it? And she was like, unfortunately, there was a lot of shell and rocks in the mix. So there comes this problem with where you can't just take it and throw it in. There's also this other human element where you have to jump in and then separate it even further, and that just makes more work of it. So it is feasible, but again, it's not as plain cut as you think, just from water dried out and then throw it in after. And then as far as edibility goes, I had a gentleman that interviewed me for an article last year, and as we were walking on the beach, he picked up a piece of it and just started nibbling on it and said it was good. So, I mean, I trust his work. After dealing with it so much, I'm personally not going to eat it. That being said, though, in Eastern Asia, more specifically Japan, they do farm Codium more regularly, and granted also a different species, but it is similar. If you did want a good recipe, apparently if you take salt, pepper, red pepper flake, soy sauce, vinegar, tomato, and chopped up onion, and then you wash the Codium down and you mix it all in there, it's a really good seaweed salad that also has good omega-3 fatty acids, which is good for your brain. So there's that. There's also a French dish I found an article about in the 1800s, which is basically a scallop with cream sauce and a Codium garnish, where they just grind it up very finely and then drop it on. So it gives that little umami kind of boost. So that, I mean, unfortunately, as far as the program went, you know, the utilization of it was more of a second part of it. It wasn't something that when we were approached about it, we were looking to do. It was more there just to help remove it. And then utilization of it kind of came after the fact when we were realizing, hey, we're getting a lot more than we're expecting. So like, let's try and, you know, get this out to the people or make this a more viable, I don't want to say product, but viable component for people using their soil. So, again, Future Changes program, utilizing Codium, that's be a huge one. You know, it's not like I'm still getting conversations with people about, you know, can I come grab some? Can I use this in my garden? Can I take this to, you know, mix up and just fill a pot hole? Like, there's opportunity there. Just furthering those conversations, opening it up, and hopefully this kind of meeting and sharing this knowledge will kind of open those opportunities. And, you know, I'm not a huge gardener, but, you know, some of you guys might be, so you might already have some ideas as to how to utilize it. But on top of that, just more shell fishermen, more Codium removal. You know, Aquinnah, we have a decent amount of guys that are able to go out, but there doesn't seem to be a growing amount, and newer people like my age that are going out. So, you know, when you only rely on a handful of guys to go out and remove it, I mean, that's not to discount the fact that they've removed this much amount already. Just the more that you have, the more people that are going out, the more that are taking this, and the more that can report back to me about, you know, is the problem getting better? Is it getting worse? Is it kind of, you know, plateauing? Are they seeing it grow up again in certain areas that they thought it was removed? So, yeah. And then what can you do as an individual? If you're walking along the shore and you see it, huck it in the woods, huck it in the dunes, whatever, as far away from the water line as possible, because, I mean, as you saw, that tiny branch can float back out, find a rock, find a scallop, find whatever, root into it, grow into a whole branch, and then all of a sudden it's spawning, and the problem restarts. So, especially also, like, whenever I'm out on the docks and I'm removing it and I see, you know, a tiny strand break off, I'm always sure to go back and just collect it, just because I don't want to make any more work for myself. I don't want to make any more work for any of the other guys. And then on top of that, just talk to your town shellfish warden, town constable, town administrator about regulations. That's not to say, I'm pretty sure all towns on Martha's Vineyard have regulations in place for the removal of it, but just because it's there might not mean that people are totally aware about it or don't realize the impact that it does have on their waters and how it's actually affecting their own pockets by hindering the aquaculture industry. So just, you know, promoting that, having that conversation. Is a similar removal program a viable option for your town? Is that something that can happen? What needs to go into it? Who does that fall under?
Can you tell us a little bit more about the financial aspects of it? Like, how much did you get per tote when you turned in if you were a fisherman?
Yes, so I guess I'll probably go back to that, because that also might explain some of this. So when we first started off, we were paying $20 a tote, which was a large amount, but granted that was a large issue and there was only a handful amount of guys. So in doing so, you know, we spent, it was around $8,300 in total from what was removed in the first year. So that's a lot of money to spend and to pay people. This program is funded through the Bureau of Indian Affairs Invasive Species Grant. So we were able to, we had funds and we were able to allocate them towards this program. And then as we reviewed the program within the first year, we realized that we were spending a lot on, and granted, the removal has been great, but at a certain point, not that I'm saying anyone was doing it, but it would almost feel like there was a potential that people could be going out more specifically to target Codium. Not saying that's possible, but as the season went on, and you're still bringing up 10 totes and you're bringing in less bushels, it becomes a little more questionable. So to deter from that targeting of the species, and again, this wasn't a reward, this wasn't a program that was created for people to go out and specifically remove Codium. This was more so to offset that cost of your time and resources spent and your gas that's going constantly because you're burning fuel out there just sifting through this stuff. So in review of that, we dropped the price down from $20 to $10 this year. So when you look at it, there's a bit of a difference in it, but that's also, again, not to say, you know, within the same conditions, these guys that are going out, they're still pulling up nearly as much. I doubt if we had said $10 last year, there would have been any difference in the amount that was getting removed. And then as far as, you know, other gear, I mean, the totes are, I think like $30 a piece, $50. I don't know what tariffs are put on them, but that can kind of lead to a bit of a price increase. So beyond that, I mean, there's not a whole lot of other gear. You might need some rakes, and I mean, I don't know how much a 2500 is going for these days, if that's something you want to use, unless you have a truck yourself. Yeah, so the financial aspect, the price of the totes was different, but I'm confident that I don't think it had a whole lot of difference on what was removed the first year versus what was removed the second year. And then, what else? So yeah, so in conclusion, before we go off, it was a huge success. I mean, very happy with, again, how much was removed, and we were very shocked at the amount that we were able to receive. Continue this conversation within your towns. We hope that, you know, if you're in Oak Bluffs, you know, we're up in Aquinnah. We're kind of, you know, hop, skip, and jump away. So sometimes word doesn't travel far down to the other towns. So we hope that this kind of conversation can continue forward, because not only is it affecting the aquaculture, I mean, it's affecting your pockets, it's affecting the aquaculture industry by hindering the abilities of scallops, and it's also affecting eelgrass restoration because, eelgrass restoration, that is a huge issue, or not issue, but as a huge process that is happening on the island. There are multiple towns that are taking different initiatives and leads into whether free seeding or planting efforts themselves, that kind of thing. By, you know, removing Codium, you'll allow for that native species to grow back, which ultimately, again, like, you know, we do this for, everyone comes down for money, but like, we're doing this for the betterment of the health of an ecosystem of our waters, which, you know, eelgrass is definitely going to be a lot better for, and it's definitely going to have a lot more beneficial aspects to everything else that goes on in there by removing it. So continue to raise awareness about it and look out for removal opportunities. I know in August 9th at Lagoon Pond, there is going to be a shoreline Codium removal process that will be taking place. So, you know, if you would like to come and learn more and have a hand in helping remove it, we will be there, and, you know, we will be facilitating it, and I'd be more than happy. I'm sure, you know, after this program's wrapped up, I'll have a lot more comments and ideas for the future of this program. So we'll be there to discuss. I know that's a little bit of ways away, but summer always sneaks up on us. So yeah, you know, thank you for coming.
I have a question for
Yeah,
you.
I wanted to open up the questions after, but
Oh, sorry.
no, I guess yeah. No, I'll answer your question.
Oh, I had a question for Sherry. Where are you guys taking your Codium after you collect it?
We have not determined that yet.
Oh, okay.
So that's something that's in the works, and we've been talking to Andrew about some of the
Okay.
logistics of everything, but we will have something to do with that.
Yeah, no, I'm just
Yeah.
curious, because if we all start doing it, it's great. It's just, you know,
Yeah.
finding.
Finding again. Yeah, like we are
The
lucky enough.
biochar things, interesting.
Yes, which I'd love to further that conversation with Maggie, who I don't know if Maggie's in the back, actually, it's awesome. So we can have that conversation more. But yes, we're lucky enough, through the Natural Resources Department to have the opportunities we have in place where we can have a place to dispose of this stuff and the opportunity and the gear and resources and funding that goes into it. I'm not saying, go out and, apply for a grant or, you're gonna get this amount of money. It's not that easy, and we're lucky enough to be in that position where we can benefit from that. But again, even the smallest things go a long way, so. Sure.
So have you guys done any testing or know of any testing with respect to the amount of nitrogen you're removing that is contained in Codium?
We have not done it yet. That was not the intent of when we created the program. The intent was to just assist with town members in removing it. I'm sure there's potential for that kind of thing to come up later on, but again, that wasn't the intent of the process, so that was never something that we ended up looking at.
Yeah, it's just something that would be really interesting because, of course, you have Phragmites that people
Yes.
for a long time wanted to remove, but, and they go dormant, and there's just been a lot of stuff back and forth on that. But Codium is one where if you're removing 65,000 pounds of it, it'd be really interesting to see how much nitrogen is coming out by doing that. And also to test it, is there certain times of year where it's better to take it out than others because it has a higher nitrogen content?
To answer the part at least about the time of years, it differs just because it's not like we're the ones going out and removing this Codium, we're kind of relying on town members. We have, not that we tiered it, but there was the potential idea of, do we as the tribe purchase a boat that we can go out and remove it ourselves, but then where's the feasibility in that? Am I gonna be the one going out? We're a small team and we're able to operate as lucky as we do, but that's not something that we're right in the business for.
Yeah.
But that conversation, along with Phragmites, that you bring up a great point. I'm sure that'd be something that we could look into further. Danielle?
Yeah, I have a couple questions, comments. On that graph, what was the number one,
Which one? This one?
yeah, that
This
one.
It was.
On one day, what was, one fisherman's haul of, Codium? Did he get, 6 totes?
First year, it ranged from anywhere from 5 to 8 totes from a trip. And granted, these guys it would be 2 people on a boat, and they were out there for 4 hours. I'd go and clock in the morning. I'd see them out in the water, and then at 1 o'clock they'd call me up and say, "Hey, I'm coming in with I got 8 totes for you." And I'd go out. So it's not like they're hauling all this up in the span of an hour. It takes some time to it.
How did you keep track of, how many?
I would pull. Everyone has their slip kind of, so I kind of knew who their boats were. So I would just take note and say, okay, he got an 8 and he's got 4. I'd write on my phone, and then in my computer I had a profile and time list of individuals, how much they're bringing, what date, and then how much that amounted to in price.
Also, on the totes, did you put holes in the bottom?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Although for some reason someone started putting tape over those, and that kind of made it a lot more easier or harder for me, especially when it would rain all weekend. So, yeah. But yes.
What's the growth cycle? You showed the piece that broke off and then the large clump. How long does it take to grow from that?
So it takes, from what I found, it differs from species to species. Some say it depends on what, but it'll spawn in the summer, and then by the following summer it can be a full branch, and other times it's the winter. I found, at least with this subspecies, that it is more so in the winter that it'll spawn and will grow, but it's usually within a year's length. Also the picture's deceptive. Codium, a branch like that, it's maybe that much. It's more cluttered, but it's not like it's this giant, strand of it.
And
So
then how old, you have an annual, you have a perennial, they have life cycles. Does this have a specific life cycle?
from specific life, I saw up to 3 years, and again, you can also, the darker bits are the older side, whereas the lighter bits are more fresh grown. Again, 3 to 4 years from what I could find, with it being, the average life cycle until it eventually just can't reproduce and kind of dies off, so. Yes?
What are you doing up at Aquinnah with the piles that you've been accumulating?
Letting it sit out and dry over the summer and stink up. Again, I mean, there's like, for instance, the biocharing, she came down in the summer and, you know, took it then, and it was a lot more broken down. It was pretty much like sludge at that point. But it will just sit out there primarily. And then you can see in this photo, so this was a couple weeks back, but you can see all the shell and everything around it. So that's what's left over from the previous year. So it does, as long as it's not raining, you know, within a week or so, if you let this stuff dry out, at least on the top layer, like when the guys leave totes out and I don't get to it for a weekend and it's really sunny or warm, it dries out pretty quickly. And you know, obviously when you're dropping more fresh amounts of it, all that water will also seep into it and, you know, rehydrate it, but it will break down surprisingly faster than we think. So, yes, or sorry, yes.
Go ahead, Mike.
Has anyone tried to feed this stuff to livestock?
That's my question.
So, actually one of my coworkers had mentioned the idea of, or more so with Phragmites goats, but that was not something that we had thought of. I'm sure there's potential for it. I mean, I know, again, goats eat most things, so there's potential of using that as feed. I guess that would mean more so reaching out to whoever is in charge of the goats keeping and or other livestock, people that could mix it in. But again, I mean, even in my research to feasibility, there was nothing about, you know, feeding to livestock, so.
Yeah, one of the things, I was talking to Emma Greenbeach earlier today about this talk, and she couldn't make it, but one of the things she was wondering was, couldn't you feed this to pigs? Because pigs, you know, eat a lot of, yeah.
I mean, I actually, I worked in the restaurant industry for a little bit, and we would, with the oyster shells and all the other shells, I forget the name of the program, but they would pulverize that and mix that into pig feed. So that would also be usable for the shells, but, you know, I can't comment on that right now, but I'm sure there is some viability to it.
To comment on that, I talked to Joanna Douglas, who does Fork to Fork, because we were also talking about feeding green crabs to, and she said it would be okay for supplement some of their diet, but it also can affect the meat, the taste of the meat, so you don't want to have too much of it.
Salty, fishy
Yes.
kind of pork, yeah, no, that's fair.
This pork tastes like bluefish.
A little treat, maybe,
Yeah.
treat from time to time.
That's good. I mean, the salad's good. Some guy ate it raw in front of me and he said it was all right, so I'm sure a pork or a pig wouldn't mind it as much.
And also you wonder, like green crabs, right? They're drying green crabs and making like, almost like bouillon cubes or powder
Yeah,
to
they make
cook with
crabs.
type of thing. So you wonder if you could do something like that with it, once it dries out.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of potential with it, and we have a lot of it. Again, it's just finding those right resources and those people that can more realistically use it. Because again, I'm not in the pig industry, I'm not in the gardening industry, so I don't necessarily have the opportunities to utilize this stuff. Not to say that that can't happen. And again, I hope that there are future changes program that would allow a more streamlined process of that to take place.
Are you going out for another round of funding? Are you gonna continue this project?
Uh,
Or modify
that-
it, or?
Is the goal, I'd assume so. No, not I assume so. That is the goal. With the success we've seen in the program so far, you know, there's no reason for us not to keep it going. And if we find next year that there's even less being brought in and or the same amount, then that could open up another conversation of, okay, has there been enough removed from the pond system, and then how does that go into other projects? I know right now also we're looking into eelgrass restoration within the pond as well. So this hopefully will kind of tie into that and help that process kind of accelerate a lot more.
Speaking of eelgrass, was there
No,
someone up there?
Daniel.
Oh,
There.
I
I thought
was
he was
just,
pointing at me.
oh, she can go first.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No, with the eelgrass project, have you got, like, when you put it in, would you make that space inaccessible? Like, for a while it,
Yeah, because
So-
we're not just gonna plant eelgrass and then, you know, allow people to just go through with drags. That
right,
would-
so what do you do? Do you just buoy it, or?
For the eelgrass,
Eelgrass, yeah, when you plant it.
that is something that's still in the process. I can't comment on that right now.
Oh,
and don't
okay, I
know
thought
how
you
about
had
that.
done
No,
some.
No, we haven't done, I'm just saying as that, the process of it,
I
the
can
idea of
speak
it.
to that. So,
Okay.
my colleague at Martha's Vineyard Shellfish Group, Ally McConnell, she's been doing eelgrass restoration for a few years now. And that's what she does. She uses buoys.
Okay,
Big orange ones. You'll
Yeah.
see them off the drawbridge, actually.
oh, great.
And they say, eelgrass or scientific area, do not enter.
Okay.
Are we out there monitoring boats or
Right,
scalpers or drags? No. But that's
You're doing
how
it,
she
yeah.
puts in the effort.
Do you wanna?
Yeah, I was wondering if you got some photos of before and after in the pond?
I do not, I don't have any before and no photos after. I could go out potentially and, look over the boat and take them. But that wasn't something part of the program that we were looking at in comparison between the before and after. We were just trying to get rid of it. I'm sure also, there's, potential for that, whether or not I could go under, drop a GoPro in, the area also they're scalloping in is like 5 feet depth, so I could probably just stand there and just, look down, take a photo. But no, I do not have anything at the moment.
Maybe Google Earth, like before?
Google Earth, I think the most recent year was I think it was last year, but also, especially around the island, it kind of isn't mapped out nearly as great. So sometimes you might not get that full scale, and also for reference, they would have last year's, and then until they do it again this year, we're not going to really have an idea as to first year, second year, third year. So.
To kind of add to your point, it's very difficult with satellite imagery as well to differentiate, Codium versus submerged aquatic vegetation. And Codium's not going to necessarily sit in one place. It can pick whatever it's sitting on, its substrate, it can move around. It can grow in one area versus another. So it's very difficult to kind of gauge that. So if you're going to go back to the same place before, it may or may not be there as a result of these activities.
Yes.
Have you considered doing surveys to get presence, or even just to get presence and absence, or absence of the Codium in areas, a little transit and random testing before and after?
The surveys, we haven't really considered that. Again, like the process or the program itself, it was primarily just for removal. We do have some studies going on, or previous studies from the U.S. Army Corps looking at the Menempsey Pond bed. So there is some comparison, but as far as the areas where these people are going out scalloping, there's only a select amount of sites that were really picked up on. But there wasn't, we're not doing full transect lines down that entire, just one part of the pond. But there is potential for that to come up, so. Any other questions, comments? I know it's a lot to take in, so I don't know if anyone's
Great.
very good.
Thank you so
No,
much.
thank you.
And if anyone wants, there's my email too. I'm not afraid to answer out of work hours, so you can come to me after. So.
Great.
So yes, please send Andrew any questions you have, especially if you start talking to your town constables or administrators, or you think maybe you want to go out for funding. Try a project. The tribe's a great resource because they've already started. And so then also, if you want to join us for our next talk, it's not until July, Thursday, July 10th at the Oak Bluffs Library. We'll be talking waste not, want not, town sewer and septic regulations. So we'll be talking about the CWMPs and 208s and all the buzz phrases in alphabet soup. So thank you so much for coming out today. I know it's another cold, rainy, drizzly day here on Martha's Vineyard, but that was really great and very informative. Thank you.
Hey,
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Thank you very much.